The distress signal came at 3 in the morning, station time. Lucy Marsh was already awake, reviewing data on her tablet when the alarm pulled her attention to the viewport. Outside, the stars hung cold and endless, but somewhere out there, something was dying. She reached the command center before most of the crew had finished dressing. Commander Shaw stood at the main console, his face tight with concern as sensor data scrolled across the screen. Beside him, Counselor of the Collective watched with those large, amber eyes that never seemed to blink. "Escape pod," Shaw said without looking up. "Single life sign weak." "Species?" Lucy asked. The commander paused, his jaw tightened. "Al." The word fell like a stone into water. Around the command center, conversation stopped. Lucy felt the change in the air, the sudden spike of fear that ran through every person present. The counselor made a soft clicking sound in the back of his throat. "We should destroy it," said. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "Before it wakes." Lucy understood the reaction. Everyone in the galaxy knew what the Owl were: apex predators, hunters without mercy or reason. They had wiped out 3 spacefaring civilizations in recorded history, not for resources or territory, but simply because hunting was what they did. Their natural armor could stop plasma fire. Their claws could tear through hull metal like paper. A single adult owl had once killed 40 armed soldiers before being brought down. They were nightmares made real, and one was floating toward their station in a damaged pod. "Bring it in," Lucy said. Every head turned toward her. Amber eyes narrowed. Shaw looked at her like she had lost her mind. "Dr. Marsh," the commander said slowly, "I don't think you understand what you're asking." "I understand perfectly. I'm the station's. This is exactly the kind of opportunity I'm here for. How often do we get to study a live owl?" "We don't," interjected, "because they kill everything that comes close to them. This is not a creature that can be studied. It can only be survived, and only if we destroy it now." Lucy turned to face the counselor. She respected. He was thoughtful, cautious, and usually right about most things. But she had spent her entire career studying predators, and something about this situation felt wrong. "The pod is damaged," she said. "The life sign is weak. If this owl wanted to hunt, it wouldn't be dying in an escape pod. Something happened to it. I want to know what." The argument lasted an hour. Lucy called in favors, cited research protocols, and finally played her last card. She reminded Shaw that Horizon's Edge existed specifically to study unknown phenomena. If they destroyed every dangerous thing they encountered, they might as well pack up and go home. In the end, Shaw agreed to bring the pod aboard, but only under maximum security protocols. The owl would be sedated immediately and kept in the highest security containment unit on the station. If it showed any sign of aggression, it would be terminated without hesitation. Lucy accepted those terms. She just needed the creature alive long enough to look at it. The pod docked 2 hours later. Lucy watched through the observation window as the medical team, wearing full combat armor, cut through the damaged hull. Inside, curled in a corner like a wounded animal, lay the owl. It was smaller than she expected. The records showed adult owl standing over 3 meters tall, but this one was barely 2. Young, she realized. Barely an adolescent by their species standards. Its armor plating, which should have been deep black, was pale gray and covered in scars. So many scars. Lucy pressed closer to the window as the medical team sedated the creature. She counted the wounds as they worked. Claw marks across the chest, bite wounds on the shoulders, a long, jagged tear down one side that looked like it had barely healed. These weren't battle wounds. Lucy had studied enough predator species to recognize the pattern. These wounds had been inflicted by other owl. "Interesting," she murmured. Dr. Cole appeared beside her, his face pale beneath his dark skin. He was the station's medical officer and one of Lucy's closest friends, but right now he looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. "You're really going to do this," he said. "You're going to keep that thing alive. Look at it, really look." He looked. She could see him cataloging the injuries, the obvious signs of malnutrition, the way the creature curled protectively around itself even in unconsciousness. "It's been beaten," he said slowly, "by its own kind. More than beaten, cast out, exiled." Lucy turned to face him. "Among Al, the weak are eliminated. This one survived something it shouldn't have. Its pack tried to kill it and it escaped. That's why it was in that pod. It wasn't hunting, it was running." Shook his head. "That doesn't make it safe, Lucy. It's still a Al. The moment it wakes up, it's going to try to kill everyone on this station. Maybe, or maybe it's going to be too weak and too scared to do anything at all." She left at the window and walked down to the containment level. The medical team had already secured the Al in the main holding cell, a reinforced chamber with walls thick enough to stop a small starship. The creature lay motionless on the floor, its breathing shallow and uneven. Lucy pulled up a chair and sat down outside the containment field. Counselor found her there an hour later. He stood in the doorway, watching her with that unreadable expression. "You are making a mistake," he said. "Probably. This creature will wake up. When it does, it will remember only that it is a predator and you are prey. Your compassion will not save you." Lucy smiled slightly. "Is that what you think this is, compassion? What else could it be?" She didn't answer. She just turned back to the unconscious Al and settled deeper into her chair. The creature's chest rose and fell with each labored breath. Somewhere in that alien brain, survival instincts were fighting against exhaustion and injury. Lucy had seen the same struggle in wolves pulled from traps, in sharks caught in nets, in every wounded predator she had ever studied. They all had the same look, the same desperate will to live despite everything. The thought she was being foolish, sentimental, they didn't understand. Humans hadn't survived on Earth by running from predators. They had survived by understanding them, by learning their patterns, their weaknesses, their needs, and sometimes, in ways that other species found impossible to comprehend, humans had done something far more dangerous than killing predators. They had claimed them. Lucy sat in the silence of the containment wing and watched the Al breathe. Outside, was already filing his report about dangerous human sentimentality. He thought he understood what was happening. He didn't understand anything at all. 2 weeks passed. The Al healed faster than anyone expected, its alien biology knitting together wounds that would have killed most species. By the 5th day, it was conscious. By the 7th, it was packing the containment cell with a restless, anxious energy that made the security teams nervous. But it didn't attack, it didn't even try. Lucy noticed it on the first day the creature opened its eyes. Instead of the cold, calculating stare she had seen in recordings of adult Al, she found something else entirely: fear. The creature pressed itself into the far corner of the cell, its pale eyes tracking every movement outside the containment field. When staff members walked past, it flinched. When loud noises echoed through the corridor, it curled into itself. This was not the behavior of an apex predator. This was the behavior of something that had learned to be afraid. Lucy began her routine on the 8th day. She brought her tablet, her data files, and a portable chair. She set up outside the containment field and started working. She didn't look at the Al. She didn't speak to it. She simply existed in its space, calm and unbothered, as if sitting next to a galaxy-feared predator was the most normal thing in the world. Found her there during his lunch break. He stood in the doorway, a sandwich halfway to his mouth, staring at her like she had grown a second head. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Working." "Outside a Al containment cell?" "Yes." He walked closer, keeping his eyes on the creature. It had stopped packing and was watching Lucy with an intensity that made skin crawl. "It's looking at you," he said. "I know. Doesn't that bother you?" Lucy finally looked up from her tablet. "What do you know about how predators establish dominance?" He blinked. "I'm a medical doctor, not a—" "Then let me explain." She gestured at the owl without looking at it. "That creature has spent its entire life in a social structure based on power. The strongest owl leads. The weakest dies. It understands violence, aggression, and fear because those are the only tools it has ever known. Which is exactly why you shouldn't be sitting 2 meters away from it." "You're missing the point. I'm not showing any of those things. I'm not afraid of it. I'm not trying to intimidate it. I'm just here existing, completely unconcerned by its presence." She smiled slightly. "To a owl, that's the most confusing thing in the galaxy." Stared at her for a long moment. Then he shook his head and left, muttering something about humans and death wishes. Lucy stayed. She worked through the afternoon, ate her dinner in the chair, and eventually fell asleep with her tablet on her lap. When she woke up the next morning, stiff and sore, she found the owl sitting on the floor of its cell, watching her through the containment field. It had moved closer during the night, not much, but enough to notice. Progress. Days turned into weeks. Lucy controlled everything about the creature's environment. She decided when the lights came on and when they dimmed. She chose what food was delivered and at what times. She adjusted the temperature, the humidity, the ambient sounds that filtered through the cell's speakers. Slowly, carefully, she made herself the center of the owl's world. The creature noticed. How could it not? In a life defined by violence and rejection, Lucy was the only constant. She was always there, always calm, always in control. She asked nothing of it. She threatened nothing. She simply was. Counselor came to observe during the third week. He stood beside Lucy's chair, his amber eyes fixed on the owl with undisguised unease. "You have been doing this every day," he said. It was not a question. "Yes." "Why?" Lucy set down her tablet. "Do you know how humans domesticated wolves?" The tilted his head. "I am not familiar with the term." Wolves were apex predators on Earth, pack hunters, dangerous, intelligent, and perfectly capable of killing humans. But somewhere thousands of years ago, humans started feeding them, started letting them sleep near their fires, started treating them as part of the group. She paused. Within a few generations, wolves became dogs, the most loyal companions humanity has ever known. Was silent for a moment. "You are attempting to domesticate a owl." "No, this one is too old for true domestication, but I can do something almost as good. I can make it understand that I am the dominant presence in its life, not through violence, not through fear, through consistency, control, and patience." This is madness. This is human. The made that clicking sound again, the one Lucy had learned meant deep discomfort. He left without another word. That night something changed. Lucy was reading on her tablet when she heard movement from inside the cell. She looked up and found the owl standing at the containment barrier, barely an arm's length away. Its pale eyes were fixed on her face. Lucy didn't move. She didn't flinch. She held the creature's gaze and waited. Slowly, almost hesitantly, the owl lowered its head. It pressed its armored forehead against the containment field, right where Lucy's hand rested on the other side. The field hummed between them, energy crackling softly, but neither of them pulled away. It was submission. Not complete, not yet, but it was a start. The creature that had been cast out by its own kind, beaten and then left to die, had found something it understood. Not kindness, not compassion, something older and more powerful. A leader worth following. Lucy reached up and placed her palm flat against the field. The owl pressed harder against it, a low sound rumbling in its chest. Not a growl, something softer, something almost like a sigh. "I'm going to call you Ghost," Lucy said quietly, "because you're pale like one, and because you survived when you should have died." The creature didn't understand the words, but it understood her tone, calm and steady and sure. It stayed at the barrier until Lucy finally rose to leave, and when she walked away, its pale eyes followed her until she disappeared from sight. In his quarters, Counselor finished his report to the collective. He described what he had witnessed, the slow, deliberate process by which a human was claiming a owl. He wrote about the patience, the control, the complete absence of fear. At the end of the report, he added a single observation. The humans were not being compassionate. They were being something far more dangerous. They were being predators. 3 months after the escape pod arrived at Horizon's edge, Lucy Marsh walked through the station corridors with an owl at her heel. Ghost followed her like a shadow. His pale form moved silently behind her, close enough to touch but never quite making contact. When she stopped, he stopped. When she turned, he turned. His eyes, once filled with fear and confusion, now watched the world around them with calm attention, always returning to Lucy like a compass finding north. The station crew had learned to accept it. They gave Lucy and Ghost a wide berth in the hallways, pressing against walls as the unlikely pair passed. Some of them still looked terrified. Others had begun to show something closer to fascination, watching the way the creature responded to Lucy's quiet commands and gentle touches. Commander Shaw had stopped asking questions weeks ago. As long as the owl didn't hurt anyone, as long as Lucy kept it under control, he was content to let the experiment continue. He had enough problems without adding a territorial dispute with his to the list. Counselor was not so easily satisfied. He found Lucy in the observation deck, sitting on a bench while Ghost lay curled at her feet. The creature raised its head when entered, a low rumble building in its throat, but Lucy placed a hand on its neck and the sound faded. "Counselor," she said, "can I help you?" Approach slowly, keeping a careful distance from the owl. "I require an explanation, not for my report, for myself." "An explanation of what?" "Of this," he gestured at Ghost, "of everything you have done. The collective has studied the owl for centuries. We know what they are, we know what they do, and yet here you sit with one sleeping at your feet like a tamed animal." Lucy scratched behind Ghost's ear. The creature made a sound that was almost like a purr. "Have you ever heard of pack bonding?" she asked. "No." "Humans evolved as social predators. We hunted in groups, cooperated with each other, formed tight bonds with our families and tribes. But we didn't stop there. Somewhere along the way, we started forming those same bonds with other species." Amber eyes narrowed. "Other predators." "Especially other predators. Wolves, as I mentioned before, but also horses which could crush a human skull with one kick. Hawks and falcons which hunt with talons and beaks sharp enough to blind. Humans looked at all of these dangerous creatures and saw potential, saw companions, saw family." "This is not normal," said. His voice was tight with something Lucy couldn't quite identify. "Other species do not do this. We do not look at predators and think of partnership. We think of survival. We think of escape." "I know, that's what makes humans different." She stood up, and Ghost rose with her, pressing against her leg. Lucy ran her hand along the creature's armored back, feeling the ridges of old scars beneath her fingers. "Ghost was an outcast," she said. "His pack rejected him because he was weak or different or simply unlucky. They tried to kill him, and when they failed, they drove him out. He had nothing. No home, no family, no reason to keep living." She looked at. "Then I came along. I gave him food. I gave him shelter. I gave him something to belong to, not out of compassion, out of instinct. Because that's what humans do. We find broken things and make them ours." Was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. "This is more disturbing than I imagined." "Why?" "Because you are not describing kindness. You are describing possession. You have claimed this creature the way a predator claims territory. You have made yourself its entire world, and now it will follow you anywhere, do anything, because you are all it has." Lucy smiled. "Now you're starting to understand." The alarm cut through the station like a scream. Lucy was moving before the first echo faded, Ghost keeping pace beside her. They reached the command center in minutes, pushing through crowds of confused crew members. Commander Shaw stood at the main console, his face gray with fear. "What happened?" Lucy demanded. Shaw turned to face her. His eyes flickered to Ghost, then back to her. "Long-range sensors picked up a ship entering the system. It's not responding to hails." "What kind of ship?" "Al hunting vessel, 5 life signs aboard." He paused, all adult. The command center went silent. Lucy felt Ghost press harder against her leg, a tremor running through his body. Not fear, she realized. Awareness. He knew what was coming. "They're looking for him," she said. "Probably. The Al don't let exiles escape. It's a matter of pack honor." Shaw ran a hand through his hair. "I'm ordering a full evacuation. We can't fight a Al hunting pack. No one can." Lucy looked down at Ghost. The creature was staring at the sensor display, his pale eyes tracking the approaching ship. His claws flexed against the deck plating, and that low rumble had returned to his throat. But he wasn't facing the display. He was positioned between it and Lucy, his body angled to shield her from the threat. "He's protecting me," Lucy murmured. "What?" Shaw asked. "Ghost. He knows his old pack is coming. He knows what they'll do to him if they find him, but look at him." She gestured at the creature's stance. "He's not trying to hide. He's not trying to run. He's standing between me and danger." "Stepped forward. That is pack behavior. He has accepted you as his leader. He will defend you with his life." "More than that." Lucy knelt beside Ghost, placing her hand on his neck. The creature turned to look at her, and in his pale eyes she saw something she had never expected to find in an owl. "Trust. He's not just protecting me," she said. "He's waiting for me to tell him what to do." The evacuation order went out. Shuttles began loading with crew members, supplies, anything that could be moved quickly. But Lucy didn't go to the shuttle bay. She stood in the command center, watching the sensor display as the owl ship drew closer. Ghost stood beside her, silent and still. Found her there an hour later when most of the station had already emptied. "Lucy, what are you doing? We need to leave." "I'm thinking." "Think on the shuttle. That hunting pack will be here in less than 3 hours." Lucy turned to face him. Her expression was calm, almost peaceful. "Do you trust me?" He hesitated. "I want to say yes." "Then listen. I'm not going to run. I'm not going to hide. When that pack arrives, I'm going to meet them." Stared at her. "That's suicide." "No." Lucy looked down at Ghost, at the broken creature that had become something no one in the galaxy had ever seen before. "It's a statement. And if I'm right about what I've done here, it might just be the most important statement humanity has ever made." She placed her hand on Ghost's head, and the owl pressed into her touch like a dog seeking comfort from its master. "They think they're coming to finish what they started," Lucy said. "They have no idea what they're really walking into." The breach came faster than anyone expected. Lucy felt the station shudder as the owl hunting pack tore through the outer hull. Emergency lights flickered to red, and somewhere in the distance, she heard the screech of metal being ripped apart like paper. The evacuation was still in progress. Shuttles were launching every few minutes, but there were still dozens of crew members trapped in the lower levels. Commander Shaw's voice crackled over the intercom. "All personnel proceed to emergency shelters. Security teams converge on Section 7. Repeat, Section 7. Lucy walked toward Section 7. Caught up with her in the corridor, his face pale with terror. "Lucy, what are you doing? You need to get to a shuttle." "I need to buy time." She kept walking, Ghost moving silently at her side. "Those security teams won't last 30 seconds against a owl pack, but I might be able to slow them down." "This is insane. You're going to die." Lucy stopped. She turned to face her friend, and for a moment the calm mask she had been wearing slipped. Underneath saw fear, real human fear, but something else too, something that looked almost like excitement. "Maybe," she said, "but if I'm right, I won't have to. And if you're wrong, then I'll be dead and you can tell everyone I was crazy." She managed a small smile. "Either way, you should probably get to a shuttle." Stared at her, then slowly he shook his head. "I'm not leaving you." "I'm not leaving." He straightened his shoulders, trying to look brave despite the tremor in his hands. "I'm a doctor. If this goes wrong, you might need one." Lucy wanted to argue. She wanted to order him to safety, to drag him to the shuttle bay herself. But she didn't have time. The sounds of destruction were getting closer, and Ghost was already moving, pulling ahead of her toward the breach point. They found the owl pack in corridor junction 12. 5 adult hunters stood in the wreckage of the outer hull, their black armor gleaming under the emergency lights. Each one was at least 3 meters tall, with claws longer than Lucy's forearm and teeth that could crush bone. They moved with a fluid, predatory grace that made Ghost look clumsy by comparison. The largest one saw Lucy first. Its head swiveled toward her, and it made that horrible clicking sound, the one that Al made before they killed. The others turned to follow its gaze, 5 sets of pale eyes fixing on the small human standing at the end of the corridor. Ghost positioned himself in front of Lucy. A growl built in his throat, low and threatening, but he didn't attack. He was waiting. For her. Lucy stepped forward, placing herself beside Ghost rather than behind him. The movement caught the pack's attention. The leader tilted its head, studying her with something that might have been curiosity. "Hello," Lucy said. Her voice was steady, clear, utterly calm. "I believe you're looking for him." The pack exchanged glances. Al didn't speak in any language Lucy could understand, but she had spent months learning to read their body language. She saw the confusion in their postures, the way they shifted uncertainly on their clawed feet. They had expected to find a terrified exile. Instead, they had found a human standing beside him like she owned him. Because she did. Ghost moved, not to attack but to display. He rose to his full height and pale but alive, and he made a series of sounds and gestures that Lucy had never seen before. The pack's response was immediate. They went still, their eyes widening, their claws retracting slightly. "What's he doing?" whispered from behind her. "Communicating," Lucy murmured, "telling them something." She didn't know exactly what Ghost was saying, but she could guess. He was telling them about her, about the human who had found him broken and bleeding, who had fed him and sheltered him and claimed him as her own. He was telling them that he belonged to her now, and by Al law, that meant something. The pack's attention shifted fully to Lucy. The leader took a step forward, and Lucy felt Ghost tense beside her, but she placed a hand on his neck and he stilled. "Easy," she said. "Let them look." The leader stopped less than 2 meters away. Up close, it was terrifying. Its breath smelled like blood and metal, and its eyes held the cold intelligence of a perfect predator. It studied Lucy the way a wolf might study a mouse, calculating, assessing, trying to understand. Lucy didn't move. She didn't blink. She met that ancient, hungry gaze and held it. Seconds passed. The leader made a soft clicking sound, different from the killing click, questioning. It reached out one massive claw and touched Lucy's shoulder, the possible contact, testing her reaction. She didn't flinch. The owl pulled back. It looked at Ghost, then at Lucy, then at Ghost again. Understanding was dawning in its eyes, and with it, something Lucy had never expected to see in an owl. Confusion. In their world, in their culture, only a superior predator could claim a lesser one. Ghost had been cast out because he was weak. He should have died in the void, forgotten and unmourned. Instead, he stood here, healthy and strong, under the protection of a creature that shouldn't have been able to protect anything. Lucy was small, she was soft. She had no claws, no fangs, no armor. By every measure the owl understood she should have been prey. But she wasn't acting like prey. She was acting like something far more dangerous. The leader turned to its pack. They exchanged a rapid series of clicks and gestures, too fast for Lucy to follow. But she saw the way they kept glancing at her, the way their postures shifted from predatory to uncertain. They didn't know what to do with her. Their entire worldview was built on power, on strength, on the simple hierarchy of hunter and hunted. Lucy didn't fit anywhere in that hierarchy. She had taken one of their own, claimed him, and now she stood before them without fear, as if 5 apex predators were nothing more than inconveniences. Finally, the leader turned back to her. It held her gaze for a long moment, and Lucy saw something shift behind those pale eyes. Not respect exactly, not friendship, but acknowledgement, recognition of something it couldn't quite name. It made a single, low sound. Then it turned and walked back toward the breach in the hull. The others followed. One by one, the hunting pack retreated through the hole they had made, disappearing into the void beyond. They took nothing. They killed no one. They simply left, and the station fell silent behind them. Lucy's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the corridor floor, her whole body shaking. Ghost pressed against her immediately, that soft, rumbling sound in his chest, his head pushing against her shoulder. Appeared beside her, his face white as snow. What just happened? Lucy laughed. It came out shaky and half hysterical, but it was still a laugh. I bluffed. You what? I bluffed 5 owl hunters. I stood there and pretended I wasn't terrified, and they believed me. She ran a trembling hand over Ghost's head. They thought they were coming to kill an exile. Instead, they found something they couldn't explain. A human who had claimed one of their own. A human who showed no fear. She looked up at. In their world, only a greater predator can do that. And if I could claim Ghost, if I could stand before them without flinching, then I must be something more dangerous than they are. Sat down beside her. His hands were shaking almost as badly as hers. That's the most insane thing I've ever heard. Yeah, Lucy closed her eyes and leaned against Ghost's warm, armored side. But it worked. Outside, the owl ship was already pulling away from the station, carrying 5 very confused hunters back into the void. 6 months after the incident at Horizon's Edge, Lucy Marsh stood before the High Council. The chamber was enormous, a vast dome of pale crystal that caught the light of 3 distant suns and scattered it into rainbows across the floor. Hundreds of officials sat in tiered rows, their amber eyes fixed on the small human woman at the center of the room. Behind her, patient and silent, Ghost waited. The High Speaker rose from his seat. He was old, even by standards, his scales faded to silver and his movements slow and deliberate. But his voice was strong when he spoke. Dr. Lucy Marsh of the Human Coalition, you have been summoned to explain the events that occurred at Research Station Horizon's Edge. The Council requires your testimony. Lucy nodded. I understand. Counselor has provided us with extensive reports regarding your actions. He has described how you recovered a wounded owl, how you refused to terminate it despite clear protocols, and how you spent months establishing what you call a pack bond with the creature. The High Speaker paused. He has also described how you faced an adult owl hunting pack without weapons or armor, and how you somehow convinced them to withdraw. That is all accurate. A murmur ran through the council. The High Speaker raised a hand for silence. The collective has studied the owl for over 3,000 years. In all that time, we have never seen behavior like what Counselor described. We have never seen an owl defer to another species. We have never seen a hunting pack retreat from prey. He leaned forward. How did you accomplish this? Lucy took a breath. She had known this question was coming. She had been preparing her answer for months. With respect, High Speaker, I didn't accomplish anything special. I did what humans have always done. Explain. Humans evolved on a world filled with predators. We had no claws, no armor, no natural weapons. We should have been prey, but we weren't. We survived because we learned to understand predators. We learned their patterns, their weaknesses, their needs, and then we did something that no other species in the galaxy seems to have done. She paused, letting the silence stretch. We claimed them. The council chamber was utterly still. Every eye was fixed on Lucy, their expressions unreadable but their attention absolute. On Earth, Lucy continued, we took wolves and made them dogs. We took wild horses and made them our transportation. We took birds of prey and trained them to hunt for us. We didn't do this through force. We did it through patience, consistency, and the establishment of social bonds. She gestured at Ghost. This owl was cast out by his pack. He was wounded, starving, and alone. When I found him, I didn't see a monster. I saw potential. I saw a creature that needed something to belong to, something to follow, so I gave him that. I made myself the center of his world. Counselor rose from his seat in the observation gallery. The council should understand that Dr. Marsh's methods were not based on compassion, as we initially assumed. She was not trying to heal or rehabilitate the creature. She was establishing dominance. That's correct, Lucy said. I controlled Ghost's environment completely. Food, light, temperature, social contact. Everything came through me. Over time, he learned that I was the source of all good things in his life. I became his pack leader, his alpha, the only authority he recognized. The High Speaker's eyes narrowed, and when the hunting pack arrived, they came expecting to find an exile cowering alone. Instead, they found him standing beside me, ready to defend me with his life. In owl culture, only a superior predator can claim a lesser one. By their logic, I had to be something more dangerous than Ghost. And if I was more dangerous than Ghost, then I might be more dangerous than them. But you are not dangerous, the High Speaker said. You are a small, unarmed human. You have no natural weapons at all. Lucy smiled, and yet I showed no fear. I stood before 5 apex predators and didn't run. I didn't fight. I just existed, calm and confident, like their presence meant nothing to me. She spread her hands. What kind of creature does that? What kind of prey faces predators without flinching? Something that is not prey at all, said quietly. Exactly. The owl couldn't categorize me. I didn't fit into their understanding of the universe. So they did the only thing they could do. They to reassess. They needed to figure out what I was before they could decide whether to hunt me. The council chamber buzzed with whispered conversations. The High Speaker raised his hand again, and silence fell. Dr. Marsh, are you suggesting that humans can claim any predator species through these methods? Not any species, not every individual. It requires the right circumstances, the right creature, and a great deal of time and patience. But yes, humans have a talent for it. We see dangerous things and our first instinct isn't to run or to kill. Our first instinct is to wonder whether we can make it ours. She looked around the council chamber, meeting as many amber eyes as she could. I know how this sounds. I know they find it disturbing. You evolved as prey species, hiding and running and avoiding conflict whenever possible. Fear of predators is written into your genes, but humans are different. We don't fear predators the way you do. We respect them. We study them. And sometimes, when the conditions are right, we make them part of our family. The High Speaker was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was soft. The owl have been the greatest threat to galactic civilization for. They have destroyed worlds, exterminated species, and shown no mercy to any creature they encounter. And you are telling us that humans see them as potential companions. Yes. This is perhaps the most unsettling thing I have ever heard. Lucy nodded. I understand, but it's also why humans might be the only species that can coexist with the owl. We don't see them as monsters. We see them as creatures following their nature, and we know how to work with that nature instead of against it. She reached back and placed her hand on Ghost's neck. The owl pressed into her touch, that soft, rumbling sound vibrating through his chest. Ghost will never be fully domesticated. He's too old for that and his instincts are too strong. But he's loyal. He's protective. He responds to my commands and follows my lead. If I can do this with one owl, maybe others can learn to do it too. Maybe we can find a way to turn the galaxy's most feared hunters into something else." "Into what?" the High Speaker asked. Lucy smiled. "Into pets." The council session ended 3 hours later. Lucy walked out of the crystal dome with Ghost at her heel into the soft light of 3 distant suns. Counselor was waiting for her outside. "That was quite a performance," he said. "It wasn't a performance. Everything I said was true." "I know, that's what makes it so disturbing." Fell into step beside her, keeping a careful distance from Ghost. "The council is going to debate your testimony for months, maybe years. You have fundamentally changed how they view humanity." "How do they view us now?" Was quiet for a moment. Before today, most species saw humans as friendly, cooperative, perhaps a bit strange, but ultimately harmless. He glanced at Ghost. "Now they see you differently. Now they understand that the friendly cooperation is a choice, not a limitation. That underneath the smiles and the diplomacy, there is something ancient and patient and very, very dangerous." Lucy stopped walking. She turned to face and for just a moment she let the mask slip. She let him see what she had shown the owl pack, that calm, absolute confidence that came from a species that had spent millions of years learning to claim predators. "We're not the monsters of the galaxy," she said, "but we're not the prey either. We're something in between, something that other species don't have a category for." Met her gaze, and what is that? Lucy looked down at Ghost, the pale creature that should have died alone in the void. The apex predator that now followed her like a shadow, that would kill for her, that had become something no one in the galaxy had ever seen before. "We're collectors," she said. "We find dangerous things and make them ours, not out of cruelty, not out of compassion, out of instinct as natural to us as breathing." She smiled and started walking again, Ghost padding silently at her side. Behind her, Counselor watched them go. Then he turned and made his way back to the council chambers, where hundreds of officials were already revising their assessments of humanity. The humans weren't what they had seemed. They never had been. They were the species that looked at the galaxy's most feared hunters and saw pets. And that thought was the most terrifying thing of all.